Sadowsky MetroExpress Hybrid 5-string bass unboxing and review. Part 1. Unboxing. Before I actually open the box, I just want to show how badly FedEx mangled it. Ripped tape. It's even worse on this side, completely ripped through. Just to say nothing of the giant dent on the side. And a big chunk right here. You can see the inner box. My son said it looked like someone took a bite out of it and then sat on it. Anyway, I'm hoping this is not as severe as the damage to the sire, where they actually managed to smash through 2 boxes and damage the base itself. So let's get started. Part 2. Review. Criteria. Over the past few years, as I've tried out a wide variety of instruments in the quest for perfection, or at least satisfaction, I've accumulated a list of deal breakers for bass. Ugly headstock design. Okay, not really, but, well, yes, okay, really. Glossy neck. I need that smooth satin finish for my sweaty palms. Active electronics without a passive switch. I need a failsafe if a battery dies on stage. Single coil pickups. I can't stand the hum, no matter how good they might sound while playing. I'll swap them out whenever possible. Then there are a few other things that maybe aren't absolute deal breakers, but there's something I'll need to, deal with. No shielding in the cavities. I'll fix that myself with some copper foil if needed. Stacked knobs. They'll often bind together, and if they're too tall, they feel like they'll bend the whole shaft. Bad nut. It's hard to explain what I mean here, but I've learned to look closely for any signs of trouble. Bridge design. Is it too tall for a proper setup? Are the string holes too small for a 130 gauge B string? Action/setup. I want it absolutely as low as possible and still buzz free. I know it can be done. Muddy tone. Why bother with a tone pot if it doesn't make a difference? I've had a lot of trouble finding a bass in the sub $1,000 price range, or even sub $2,500 honestly, that meets my criteria. But I have found a few. The bass I'm most satisfied with is actually the Franken bass I cobbled together myself from parts of a Fender Player Jaguar and a Squier Affinity Precision. But my quest for a 5-string that's up to these standards has been a disaster, so far. Now, some people have asked me, with all of the instruments I've gone through, several of which I ended up selling at a loss because it was too late to return them, why didn't I just buy one really nice bass, like a custom shop, handmade instrument from a highly skilled luthier? That's a good question. I just know that would be putting way too much pressure on it, with unrealistic expectations. If I spent $4,000 or $5,000 on a bass, I would want it to be absolutely perfect in ways it could never be. I get more satisfaction out of a $500 instrument that's 85% of the way to perfection than I would get out of a $4,000 instrument that was 98% perfect. That 2% would gnaw at me forever. So, how close to perfect do I need a $1,200 instrument to be? Let's say 93%. If this Sadowsky is 93% perfect, I'll be satisfied. Let's get quantitative. I listed off 10 deal breakers at the top of this video. As it happens, they correspond to pretty much all of the general characteristics of an electric bass. So I'm going to rate the Sadowsky MetroExpress Hybrid 5-string on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of these criteria and see what score I get. Design. Neck. Electronics. Pickups. Cavities. Hardware. Nut. Bridge. Action. Sound. Extra credit. 2 to 5 points for a gig bag, depending on quality and usability. 2 points for flat wound strings, and 1 to 3 points for je ne sais quoi. Design. Sadowsky instruments fall into that category I just talked about in my Sire video, FSOs, fender-shaped objects. I think at this point, more bass manufacturers are imitating the jazz bass body style than not. Sadowsky's instrument looks like a jazz bass at first glance, but it's not a direct copy. The body is slightly smaller than a jazz bass, which is nice. Jazz basses are kind of big. And by making it smaller, they've also made it lighter, which is a big plus. Most 5-string jazz basses made today weigh between 10 and 11 pounds. This one is just over 9. The place where FSOs stop being fender-shaped is the headstock. Fender has a trademark on their famous headstock design, so other manufacturers have to find their own approximations thereof. I really do not like Sire's headstock design. That wonky curve at the end just looks like a mistake. Sadowsky's head design is much more graceful. Clearly inspired by Fender, but still its own thing. Sadowsky's color options are great. I've always wanted an orange bass, and I've owned a few in the past. But this might be my favorite orange yet. And I think the tortoiseshell pickguard is a perfect complement, even if I don't totally love the look of this particular pickguard up close. But to quote Steve Jobs, design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. There is true innovation and attention to detail in the design of Sadowsky instruments. I do have one complaint about the body design. This bass only comes with locking strap buttons. I can't speak to anyone else's experience, but I have never had a strap fall off with standard strap buttons. The only time I ever had a strap come off was with locking buttons because the nut holding the lock mechanism onto the strap had worked itself loose. Overall, though, I give the design of this bass a 10 out of 10. Neck. Satin finishes on the back of the neck have more or less become standard on modern guitars and basses, and I love it. I never liked a glossy neck because they don't get along well with my sweaty hands. But satin finishes come in a couple of different treatments. Some instruments have a coat of satin polyurethane, which still has that smooth satin feel, but also seems, well, finished. Others have untreated wood that has been oil rubbed, and sometimes I just can't quite tell. Unfortunately here, I can't quite tell. I also like a fretboard with rolled edges. This one doesn't have rolled edges, or maybe they're just barely rolled. It seems a bit inconsistent across the length of the neck, honestly, which suggests hand finishing, but not the most expert work. As for the frets themselves, they're weird. There's no sprout or roughness, not even close, but they still feel a bit off. I realized on close inspection exactly why that is. Most basses have fret slots cut all the way to the edges of the fretboard. The fret wire is inserted into these slots, then cut, filed, and polished for, ideally, a smooth edge, seamlessly aligned with the wood. There's something very unusual about Sadowsky's fretwork. The fret slots are not cut all the way to the edge. The frets end just slightly before the edge of the wood. And although the frets are rounded off, they don't really taper. So they're not sharp, but they're still uncomfortable bumps as you move your hand across the neck. I also noticed that a few of the frets are slightly off-center. They're inset farther on the bass side and closer to the edge of the fretboard on the treble side. If they had to make this mistake, I really wish it had been in the other direction. I might not have even noticed an issue. I really tried not to fret about the frets, but the more I played it, the more I hated how it feels to play. I would only be happy with this neck if I took it to a luthier to roll the edges and taper off the fret ends, and I feel like I shouldn't have to do that with a Sadowsky. There's one other thing about the neck I just have to mention because it seems uncharacteristically poorly designed. The 21st fret. I noticed in the photos before I ordered it that the neck heel seemed oddly squared off compared to most other basses I've seen. When I got the bass, I understood why. The 21st fret is a weird extension of the fretboard beyond the rest of the neck. It overhangs the pickguard in a way that means you have to remove the neck to remove the pickguard. Since I'm kind of a freak about peeling the protective film off of stuff, it also meant removing the neck, just to not have little bits of plastic film on the pickguard sticking out from under the fretboard. I really don't need a 21st fret. I'd prefer not to have it over this weird half-assed compromise. It seems like they just wanted to find a way of adding a fret without having to redesign anything else around it. Considering these issues, which bother me more the longer I think about it, I'm giving this neck a 4 out of 10. Electronics. I don't really like active electronics. Mostly I just don't get that much benefit out of the EQ, and I'm constantly stressed that the battery might die during a performance. So if a bass does have active electronics, it has to have a passive mode as a failsafe. I also really do not like stacked knobs. They always seem to stick out way too far, to the point where I worry they're going to bend the potentiometer shaft, and they often bind together when you turn them. This bass has 4 knobs, fortunately none of them stacked. In order, they are volume, blend, active bass boost with push-pull for active-passive mode, and active treble boost. The blend knob feels backwards to me, turning counterclockwise for the neck pickup and clockwise for the bridge. But I checked the owner's manual, and it's Sadowsky's standard to wire it this way. The manual notes that you can rewire it to operate in reverse, but that requires soldering. No thanks, I'll get used to it. Initially I found the 2-band EQ underwhelming, especially since these are boost only, no cut. But as I started playing around with it, I realized this might actually suit me well, addressing one of my biggest problems. I tend to just play with the volume all the way up, but on most PJ basses I've played, the bridge pickup has way lower output. I play mostly on the neck pickup, then if I happen to switch to the bridge pickup, my sound just completely disappears under the rest of the band. With this bass, if I generally play with the active boost most of the way down, as the manual suggests, then I can turn up the boost when I switch to the bridge pickup and still manage to cut through the mix. With this bass, I might finally like active electronics. That said, I'm disappointed there's no passive tone control. It sounds fine as is, so I probably wouldn't need a tone control, but it really does underscore the idea that passive mode is just a failsafe, and this bass is intended to always be played in active mode. For electronics, I'm going to give this bass an 8 out of 10. Pickups. This bass is Sadowsky's hybrid design. Basically, it looks like a jazz bass, but it has a PJ pickup configuration instead of 2 single-coil J-style pickups. The J pickup is supposed to be noise canceling, but I did notice a slight bit of buzz when it's soloed. The pickups have a great clarity and response. I like the versatility of the PJ combination. It's the best of both worlds, and the pickups also sound great together. The low notes on the B string sound clear and distinct as well. People talk a lot about tone wood and whatnot, but in my experience, pickups really are the sound of the instrument. These pickups are great. They're not completely perfect, but there's no reason to even consider swapping them out. 9 out of 10. Cavities. I think most guitarists and bassists wisely leave things alone. Not me. I barely had this bass out of the box for 15 minutes before I already had the thing taken apart to inspect all of the details. I was pleased to see the cavity on this bass is not only shielded, but it's lined with copper foil, not just conductive paint. The wiring is tidy and everything looks expertly assembled. I did get a chuckle out of the odd Alphabet Soup brand name on the 9-volt battery. I guess Warwick's factory in China gets its batteries from Amazon. I appreciate the convenience of the snap-on cover for the cavity, making it easy to access the battery without any tools. But I was going to rate the cavity 10 out of 10 until I took the bass to a rehearsal. You see, I hadn't played it with my phone in my pocket yet. The cavity is shielded, but the huge plastic cover on it is not. And I keep my phone in my right front pocket, right next to the cavity. As our rehearsal was about to start, I got a text, and it produced interference that was then blasted through my amp. It sounded just like those crappy Harman Kardon speakers that used to come with Dell computers in the 90s. I have never had that happen with any other bass, and it seems dumb to have to put my phone in a different pocket just so I can play my instrument. I would be inclined to line the inside of the plastic cover with copper foil myself, but I'm not confident it would resolve the issue, plus it might make the cover hard to close. I was going to give the cavity a 10, but after this incident, I'm giving it a 6. Hardware. Other than the strings themselves, the parts of a bass you touch the most are the tuners and the knobs. I want to feel quality materials and smooth motion. Sadowsky uses their own lightweight tuners, which help keep the instrument balanced despite having a lightweight body. And the knobs, well, I have nothing to complain about. I don't totally love their utilitarian appearance, but they're quality metal, not plastic. They feel very solid and turn smoothly without any of the lopsidedness knobs can sometimes have due to their set screws shifting them slightly off-center relative to the shafts. What should I rate the hardware? I wish the knobs had a bit more personality, but I can't really justify anything less than a 10 out of 10. Nut. Wow, what can I even say about this nut? The first thing you see are 2 black dots. Those are actually very small hex screws because Sadowsky provides an adjustable height nut. Specifically, this is the Just A Nut 3. When I was first looking over the bass, I noticed that the nut was off-center, inset next to the B string and protruding slightly from the edge of the neck by the G string. I was hoping that it would be easy to move once I had the strings off, and I'm pleased to say that yes, it absolutely was. The Just A nut is in 2 pieces. One is attached to the neck, and the other rests in a slot above that. It was not an issue at all to fix the alignment while I was swapping on my preferred flat wound strings. I can't give any category more than 10 out of 10, so you know what this one gets. Bridge. I felt like a bit of a doofus as I was restringing this bass, because I didn't understand the ingenious bridge design at first. Each of the string holes in the bridge is connected to a larger hole just to the side, which makes it easy to insert the string from the front, ball end first, instead of having to thread the entire string through the bridge. It prevents shaving off tiny bits of the string, and is basically just a lot easier to deal with. I can't speak to how well the saddle adjustment works on this bass because it came set up almost perfectly, so I didn't need to make any string height or intonation adjustments. But judging by the overall thoughtfulness of the design and the quality set of tools that came with the bass, I have no doubt that everything about this bridge is excellent. 10 out of 10. Action. I'm not afraid to make adjustments to my basses. Truss rod tension, saddle height, intonation, etc. I thought when I was initially playing the bass that I might need to adjust the height of the E string because I was noticing a bit of buzz. But once I had swapped on my flat wounds, the tension increased just enough that the buzz went away. I didn't need to make a truss rod adjustment, but if I did, I think I would appreciate the wheel design, much easier to access than a traditional truss rod. The action isn't quite as low as I'd like it to be, which is ridiculously low, but it might be difficult to get it any lower without fret buzz, so I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Sound. All of the above is well and good, but what really matters is how a bass sounds. I touched on this a bit already, but I think it sounds great. The bridge pickup maybe isn't quite as snarly as I would like from a jazz bass, but it does sound distinctly different from the deeper, rounder tone of the neck pickup. I can't overstate the importance to me of having a clean, buzz-free signal. If a pickup is noisy, I just won't use it. And if there's not an easy way to boost the signal of a weaker output pickup, again, I just won't use it. I'm not doing a formal tone demo in this video, but all the backing music, including what you heard in the opening, was played on this bass. Even though the Sadowsky doesn't have quite as much tonal versatility as a bass with a 3-band EQ or a more snarly bridge pickup, I think the choices that were made here make its full range of tonal possibilities more usable in real-world situations for me than most other basses I've played. Still, I feel like I might be letting it off too easy, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Final score. Time to tally things up. Design, 10. Neck, 4. Electronics, 8. Pickups, 9. Cavities, 6. Hardware, 10. Nut, 10. Bridge, 10. Action, 9. Sound, 9. Total, 85. At the beginning of the video, I said I was expecting at least a 93 to be satisfied with this bass. But let's not forget the extra credit. 2 to 5 bonus points for shipping with a gig bag, depending on the quality. First, a side note, I'm talking gig bag specifically. I don't want a hard shell case, since I'm not flying with my instrument. They're too big and heavy for schlepping around town. This Sadowsky came with a really sturdy, well-padded gig bag. It's really more of a soft shell case than a gig bag. I especially like the huge side pocket, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It's excellent quality, but it's just a bit bigger than it really needs to be. Also, the zippers seem a little cheap. I also would offer 2 bonus points for that rarest of rarities, an instrument that ships with flat wound strings, just so I don't have to install my own. No points there, of course. Then finally we have up to 3 je ne sais quoi points. I'm going to give this bass 2 extra points for the ingenious designs of the nut and the bridge. So that brings us to a grand total of 91 out of 100. Sadly, still not enough to cut it. But speaking of cutting, I've decided to just cut my losses and return the bass. It may seem kind of silly or excessively picky. 91 out of 100 is a good score, but I am silly and excessively picky. Plus, all factors are not created equal. The issues with the frets and the RF interference in particular are just unacceptable for me. They're the 2 reasons I cited when I contacted my Sweetwater rep for the return. I think for now, I'm going to stop looking for a 5-string I'll be happy with, and just stick with the 4-string basses I already own. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for going on this journey with me. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Check out my Patreon and Bandcamp, and thanks again for watching.